Is it safe? Is it not safe? Is it physiological? Is it normal? Is it like you're, killing your child, depriving them of oxygen?
Is it like smoking cigarettes in
Is
your
it like smoking
pregnancy?
cigarettes in your pregnancy? Yeah. So I've seen a lot of things and it feels like it's all over the place now. And there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of big words being used in really wrong ways. I feel like I don't know. I think it's just I'd like to have a talk about it
Yeah.
from a place of groundedness and love. Like I don't want to be throwing anybody under the bus.
Holy Wild Birth is a podcast embracing the reclamation of giving birth, rooted in God's original design, undisturbed.
Here, we share homebirth stories highlighting God's presence as the great midwife, as well as conversations about all aspects of a holistic, spirit-led childbearing year. From the perspectives of myself, traditional midwife Lauren Hall of Rooted in Eden Private Contract Association,
And me, holistic doula and birthkeeper Brooke Collier of Sister Birth.
to choose a holy wild birth journey is to consecrate all your decisions unto the Lord.
And to reclaim creation unadulterated by centuries of human attempts to control and improve upon what God has already called good.
Please remember, birth is not a medical event, but a natural process. We are not your care providers, and this should not be taken as medical advice.
Okay, here we are. Lauren and I are
Hello.
in the studio together today for a conversation. Hi, Lauren.
Hi. Very excited about this conversation. Kind of,
Kind of
I
excited,
say that
a little
kind of
nervous.
excited, a little nervous, a little bit of trepidation as we feel like we're kind of going in to poke the bear.
Yep. I'm not too seriously worried about it though. I feel like this is one of those like things that's like a flash in the pan and is probably going
It's
to
a
be gone
flash in
again
the
in 2 or 3
pan.
weeks.
It
But
really
it's such a trending
is.
topic that we kind of felt like we couldn't ignore it, and we were getting requests to talk about it too. So here we are, drum roll. What's the topic, Lauren?
Water birth.
Water birth.
Is it safe? Is it not safe? Is it physiological? Is it normal? Is it like you're killing your child, depriving them of oxygen? Is it like smoking cigarettes in your pregnancy? Yeah. So I've seen a lot of things and it feels like it's all over the place now. And there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of big words being used in really wrong ways. I'd like to have a talk about it from a place of groundedness and love. I don't want to be throwing anybody under the bus. I think that ultimately everyone is trying to make sure that they are honoring the design and having as much as we are in control of safe, rational, responsible choices as we give birth.
Yes.
And everyone wants to have a healthy baby and to give that's really why most home birthers are giving birth at home because we believe it's safer because it's what it's not for the twinkle lights and the aesthetic.
No,
It's
it's because we want to give
bec-
our babies
because we
something
want to
that's
give our
good.
babies the best
Yeah.
that we feel is the best for our bodies, for our children. And ultimately, even as we go into this, and I am trepidatiously feeling like it's going to feel targeted at people who have been making the claims, we're all wanting the same thing. See, we all want to give our babies the best start in life and are making choices from a place of love and wisdom, or at least we're attempting to. That's the goal. And we all have different perspectives on how we're going to do that. And so I want to maintain that heart posture as we go through this because I feel like there are some things that are just very obviously counter to what is being said. And it's like, okay, as I say that this is wrong, I'm also not saying that this person is a bad person or that they have ill intentions or they're a scammer, or we're all trying to just do the best that we
Yeah.
can. From that
Yeah.
place, let's talk about
Yeah.
water birth.
But we did want to get a nitty gritty conversation about some of the
Yes.
specific claims that you see
Yes.
circulating, because I think a lot of them are being misunderstood, and because a lot of really big words are being used and supposed research is being quoted, it can make it sound like, oh, these people really know what they're talking about,
Right.
when that may or may not actually be the truth. So,
Yeah, I think there's some major misunderstandings of the physiology that is being shared. Just a very
yeah.
oversimplified understanding of God's incredibly complex design.
Yeah.
I think that what you will find is that when you understand the words, and I'm going to try and give some good analogies of what's being said, about hypoxia and vasopressin and oxytocin levels and ANP and all of these like physiology, biology words, right? I'm going to try and bring some
Mhm.
common analogies to help us understand that. And I think what you will find is that you'll actually see that water birth can actually be quite beneficial to the physiological design. And then there are times that, both in our own intuition and our experiences where it's great to have a water birth and it's also great not to have a water birth. And there's nuance here. So I think that that's really what I'm hoping to get across. We can actually see the physiology is saying exactly opposite of what is being claimed.
By those who are saying water birth is a bad idea.
Right.
Yeah. So let's back it up one step just for a brief minute. So we're going to be talking about looking at research articles, and I want to just kind of define what counts as research and what is trustworthy sources. And there are entire graduate level courses about this, so we're not attempting to teach one of those, but I a little while ago I started trying to
Right.
just do a roundup of all the different kind of sources of information that were arguing against water birth and the sources of information that were arguing that water birth is safe and beneficial. And I was gathering them all up into a bubble up folder. And a theme quickly emerged, which was the folder that was arguing that water birth was beneficial and safe were mostly peer reviewed research articles that were done in reputable ways that have stood the test of time. They were actual research articles, like the kind that you would be taught is acceptable to include as a source on a research paper in a graduate course.
Right.
And the things I was finding against water birth were literally 100% Instagram posts of a few key players making these multi-pointed arguments about why water birth isn't instinctual, it isn't natural, it is unsafe, it's like smoking cigarettes, and no sources quoted. It seemed more like this is what feels right to me, this is what my brain tells me that this doesn't make sense, or it didn't feel right for me and here's why. And it's not that personal experience is invalid or that
Not at all.
our personal reasoning is invalid. It's not. But to extrapolate from that, a take home message that then says, therefore, all of you should run for the hills as far away from this as you possibly can, is not responsible. It's just not responsible or fair. So I'll include the link to that rule in case you want to see it for yourself. It was really striking to see it laid out like that.
Yeah, and then I will say there was one, research article that finally got pulled in, and
Oh, yeah.
there was one that was saying like, "Okay, this finally proves what I was saying that's being tested in labor." 1, it was on a sample size of 11 women, and 2, when you actually read the whole thing, it doesn't support what she was saying. On the surface, if you don't really understand what the physiology that they're referring to, it kind of looks like it's supporting her claims. But when you read the whole thing and you actually look at what it's saying, it doesn't, it's actually in competition as well with what she's saying. And so I'm saying she, but with what the major claims that I've been seeing. And there are just some key players. So trying not to point a finger directly, but sometimes
Yeah.
it's just it's just there. So, um,
We'll
but
link to
yeah,
that study in the show notes too, so you guys can see
yeah,
that because Lauren's probably going to talk about it in a little
I
bit
will.
here
I
too.
will for sure.
Yeah.
So I guess with that, like how do you determine reliable, trustworthy sources? Like things like how many people, what we call it sample size, but how many people were actually being studied? What was being looked at? Are we looking at animals? Are we looking at humans? You know, All of those kinds of things are important. Whether it's peer reviewed, meaning was it someone's opinion piece from their expert opinion, which is valid. Like, you know, I were to write something, it wouldn't necessarily be in a peer reviewed journal, but it there is some expertise behind my opinions, right? So there are um and there are other people who are actually writing things for journals that are still opinion pieces. So there's a differing types of research out there. And so they can be peer reviewed, but they can still be opinion pieces or, expert advice from their clinical experience versus like double blind studies where there's a placebo or they're shifting only one variable so that you can repeatedly see it on a larger scale. And so it's just there's different kinds of research out there. There's quantitative and there's qualitative. And again, there's lots there,
Different
but
models of statistical analysis, like
right.
mathematically, and who was included or excluded in the study. Like
Yep.
that matters a lot too. So
And then
many
the
things.
biases that show up in those studies. Who actually is paying for this study? Who is doing the study? What is the place that they are studying? Like, are most of them are going to be hospital based,
Mhm.
birth when we're talking about birth studies, right? Like they're large quantities of data in very much not physiologically appropriate births, right? There's inductions and C-sections and Pitocin being. Where are these studies coming from? Like who's being studied?
Mhm.
You will see that that comes out when we start looking at things that are smaller sample sizes and less of like the gold standard, but have more of a home birth population, right? So
Right.
there are value in all of the different types of studies, but we have to understand what it is that we're reading when we're looking at it. If we're going to start pulling black and white standards out of a single study, we have to understand that the nuances and its limitations and its obstacles so that we can decide whether this is actually something that's pertinent to us, and especially as we think about being outside of the box as
Mhm.
free
Mhm.
birthing home birthers, midwife attended home birth. It's very different. It's a very different atmosphere and a different subset of people, different nourishment levels, like all the things, right? So that's a whole big rabbit trail, but it's important to look at where are these studies, who's speaking, and then where is their information coming from and how has it been checked and where are the biases and etc. What research question were they asking when they looked at it?
Right. Right.
Because also it could be a great study, but if they asked a different question than what you're trying to ask while you read their study, you can quickly take away different conclusions for positive or negative in that. So yeah.
So that's the bigger context of like research in general. And we just felt that was worth talking about for a minute. Is it time for us to set you loose on the big words?
We did say we wanted to back up a little bit and share some of our own personal water birth histories and
Sure.
stories and beliefs.
Yeah.
Brief. Do we want to do that before we like dive deep, or do we want to just keep
Sure. In
going
the
on this
interest of
train that we're on?
transparency, yeah, we wanted you all to know what our own personal journeys are with
Our
water birth.
biases.
Yeah, I honestly feel pretty for myself, I'm pretty neutral about it. I always have been. It's never felt to me like I've heard some people say that they almost home birth to them means water birth, like they're inseparable, and that hasn't been
Yeah.
my perspective or experience. I My first four babies were born on land. I did have a birth pool for my first and was in and out of it two or three times during the 48 hours I was in labor with her. And each time I got in, things slowed down a lot. So it just kind of turned out it wasn't helpful for me. So I ended up having her on land. And then I didn't even try to get a birth pool the next three times. And then my fifth, I ended up developing some pretty debilitating, like groin and pelvic area pain towards the end of my pregnancy that made it hard to even walk. And so I was having trouble imagining how I would go through the motions of birth while feeling that much pain and discomfort. I was like, how am I going to move freely and intuitively if I'm going ouch every time I move? And the only thing that felt good was the bath. So I thought, oh gosh, I think I want to have a birth pool this
Yeah.
time and try that again. So I got one, and it was incredibly effective and incredibly helpful, and it psychologically alleviated my fears. I knew that I would have that comfort to look forward to. I felt like that allowed me to move the way I needed to move. It really unlocked things for me to make that birth go really smoothly. So it was a definitely good choice. Coincidentally, or maybe some would argue because of that, I don't know, that baby had a really slow transition that required a bit of support and help from me. Gentle, it wasn't ever crazy intense, but it was a full 2.5 minutes before she took breath. And even then, it was still a little bit half hearted. Then my sixth, I got a birth pool again because I'd enjoyed it the last time, and it didn't feel as comforting that time. And I felt a little bit unmoored. I think part of me, if I hadn't been so in the thick of the intense sensations, might have climbed out. But I stayed in, and he was born in the water too. And that wasn't as overwhelmingly awesome. He transitioned just fine though. So that's my personal, in brief, water birth
Yeah.
history.
So I've had 8 babies. The first 2 were hospital births, and then my first home birth was a water birth. The midwife that I was actually, well, before that I she ooh, words. The midwife was kind of really neutral about, water birth, and so that was kind of what I came into. She was like, "It's an option. Do you want it? Do you not?" And so I ended up going using it towards the very end of a very long labor because she also was very much like, "Let's not get into it until you're really in the thick of things." And I had a 72-hour labor with this child. Like, it was
Mm-hmm.
intense. And so I didn't, like, that was kind of my first introduction to water birth was like, "Hey, let's not get into it until you're in really truly active labor and things are maybe closer to transition." But I wouldn't say that she was like pro or con water birth. It was just like one of the tools that she had. And then I really did love that water. Like, I got in the water and it shifted after have having a very really difficult long like lead up of labor. When I got into it and we were like having the baby, I remember going, "Oh my goodness, this is the immense amount of relief that my body truly needed to be able to finish out that marathon of a birth." Was, I mean, it just felt miraculous. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm also very much a water person. Like, if
Mm-hmm.
I am upset, I'm gonna go to water. If I'm joyful, I wanna go to water. Like, if I don't feel good, I'm in the bath, like, if I want
Yeah.
a self-care day, I'm in the bath. Like, that's or on a beach or at the lake or like water is
Yeah.
life to me. And so, of course, I would be very drawn to water like I am in every other part of my life. So,
Right.
if you're not drawn to water, kind of makes sense that you might not be drawn to water birth. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
so that was like my first experience, but then my fourth baby, the one following that one, I could not see him being born in the water. Like, the whole pregnancy, I was like, "No, I don't. I can't see it. I don't feel the water." And actually, he came so fast that she was in the living room trying to set up my birth pool for me because she knew how much I had loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Okay, cool, but it's not happening?" And then I had him really, really fast and actually was starting to try and go to the shower because all of a sudden I was craving water, not necessarily immersion. I just wanted my comfort of water. Um, but I didn't even make it because he just shot out. But then he had a really awful transition
Mm-hmm.
on land. When my placenta detached, he just, I mean, like, we had a full round of compressions and breath, like, just heart rate dropped down to 10 beats per minute, like, just gone. And I remembered thinking, man, if we had been in water, like, not necessarily because the water would have caused an issue, but like, I thought about the fact that she would not have been able to reach him as fast as she could.
Yeah.
He would have been taken further away from me just by the simple fact of like a water birth pool wall being between me and the midwife, who was like, I mean, smoothly took him off my chest, gave him a round of compressions, put him right back on because he came around really quickly. So he was off for just a very short period of time and then right back on my chest because she really believed in as close to possible resuscitation. She went, I mean, the only reason she took him was because he was gone. Like, okay, he needs compressions and breaths now. So I just remember thinking the Lord really ordained and let me know, yes, you love
Yeah.
water. This is not the birth for the water. And I just was fully at peace with that. And so those were the 2 really big ones that were just so juxtapositions for me. The future ones, it kind of was like that with every time. I really thought, okay, I'm not going to have a water birth. It went too fast. No, actually, I really want to have it. We got it set up, didn't get in it. The next one was I have babies too fast at this point. I'm not even going to have a water birth. It's fine. We're not going to mess with it. And then I go into labor and I was like, I need the water now. This baby cannot come out unless I have water. And I literally held her in until the water was the correct temperature and I could be in it and all of that to push her out because I knew that this child was asking for water. And she came out with a nuchal elbow and I tore like a tiny bit. And I'm like, that was the water. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then my twins were both born in water, one breech. So she was already a little shocky because she came out breech and they tend to do that. But even her, I went to give her a breath and she was like, get off me. Like, I'm fine. So
Yeah.
it's been I've had a smattering of land and water, births, home and hospital all mixed in. And yeah, like I think I prefer water because I prefer water in every day of my life.
Sure. Yeah.
But I have had no problem declining a water birth when I knew that that wasn't what my child needed. So, I don't know. I feel like I don't really have honestly, as a midwife, I think there's some biases of, like, it's actually harder for me to attend a water birth.
Yeah. It's a pain in the butt, honestly.
There's more things that I'm having to watch out for. There's always a little bit of, like, the concern of the temperature, the concern of the level of the water, and just, recognizing that as a midwife, I have that some responsibility in that space. And so I'm having to, like, there's more to analyze and there's more to take in, and it's harder to, analyze blood loss.
Yeah.
And it's,
And even
and
to get a clear view of things
get a
as the
clear
baby's
view of how that
emerging.
baby's emerging, right? Like, are they coming out fine? Is this just did they rotate? I can't really see, like all of those things
Mhm.
that you're trying to pay attention to, and it's harder. And
And
then you
if you
have
need to
cleanup.
get your hands in there, it's a little harder to
Right, I've
use
had to
one
get
breech
into
and
a pool to help a baby out once, like, literally got inside the pool with mom, like,
doing
like,
NRP with a baby that's born in the water is harder
it's
because if you wanna keep them
harder.
attached to the cord, like, you have to balance them on a cookie sheet on the side of
If
the pool
mom
or something, or keep it on
hemorrhages, then
mom.
you have to get them out. If there's a shoulder dystocia that's, like, I mean, there's just extra, and it's not even the water specifically. It's just there are extra factors that come with these, environments. And so you just have to it's an adding a layer, but it's also
I will
adding a
say
layer of
on
a
the
lot of
maternal side, like, from a mom perspective, though,
Yeah.
one of the reasons I chose a birth pool with my final birth was because I really had wanted a free birth. My husband
Mhm.
really wanted a midwife, and I knew that if I was in the water,
It created a barrier.
it
Yeah.
created a buffer around me. Not like that she would be less likely to be touching or meddling because it wasn't as convenient or easy for her to do that,
Right.
which kind of sounds terrible. Like I
But
didn't
I mean,
trust her,
it's
but I
yeah.
knew that it would give me a degree of separation that I wanted.
Even if it's just mental, you know what I mean? Like, even if it's just I'm in my own little cocoon, which could be really beneficial for someone who is not entirely connected with their birth team. Not saying that you weren't. I'm just
I
saying,
ended
like,
up being very grateful for her and asking her to help
yes,
me with something, but
absolutely.
yeah.
Like, but just in a generalized, like, if there's negative marriage stuff happening, if there's, the mother that you really didn't want there, but you couldn't say no, like, it creates a barrier a little bit,
A little cave, a
a little
watery cave.
cave. And I think that there can be a lot of benefit to it. It can bring a very stressed out mom down so that she can get into her labor land,
Those psychological benefits are
you know?
real. Mhm.
It can do a lot of, I've seen it where women were running from the pain,
Mhm.
actually be able to enter labor land because they got into the water and the anxiety and the, you know, it just allowed for the flow to happen. I've also seen where mom got in and it calmed things way too down, and it
Yep.
allowed her to disconnect from the pain too much. Like she was like, I'm not
Mhm.
trying to be in labor. I want to run away from it. And it was too early. And so she could, right? So there's nuance here. It's not A plus B equals C. Like it just isn't.
It never
Any
is with almost any choice in birth.
It never is. It kind of, which is funny. I'm going to do this, even though I'm probably going to regret it. But
I'm intrigued.
there has been in this kind of hoopla, there's been the like, why would we compare it to epidural if we don't agree with epidural? Like, why would, and water birth is the epidural of natural birth, blah, blah, blah. But even though that's been said, what it reminds me of, that nuance of like, will it slow down labor or will it help the labor dystocia? When I was reading that, especially in the one paper we mentioned earlier with the group of 11 women being studied in labor, it came to mind that we know that sometimes you give an epidural and it disconnects baby from mom, and it creates an oxytocin disconnect. There's then we start seeing this baby have distress, and it leads to the cascade of interventions and
And the
possibly
mom can't
C-section,
feel what's
etc.
happening in her body, so
Mom
she doesn't
can't
know how
feel
to,
it.
like,
She doesn't know how to
push or change
move, all of
position or
those things, right?
yeah.
So we have seen that. That's pretty much the common thing. But also, have you ever seen a mom really in maternal exhaustion, really struggling, transfer in, gets the epidural, calms down, and then has a baby because she was actually ready to have the baby, but she couldn't? And it's like,
Right.
it just needed a little bit of relief
Yeah.
to then have the baby. That same phenomena, it's like, well, is the epidural good or bad? Like, I mean, obviously there's a whole lot more happening here, but that same phenomena can be true in water birth. You get into water birth or get into the water too early when it's not appropriate, like all of those things, like it can delay things, it can slow them down. Or maybe it's not a delay. Maybe we need to reframe and realize that it's giving that mom rest that she
Yeah.
needed
To
so that
regroup.
she could regroup, rest, be thankful, and then move forward, whether she gets in or out of the water from that. It's an okay to use that as a tool. It's not harming anybody, contrary to semi popular belief. And then there's also the time where it can actually facilitate and speed up and bring about the actual birth
Yeah. But
because
unlike an
it corrects
epidural,
her
you
retrograde.
can still feel what's going on in your
Right. You
body.
can feel what's going
It's not
on.
a
You
fair
can move.
comparison
It's
to
really not.
because you really can still feel it.
Right. So I'm like, I'm not actually comparing it to epidural, but I'm trying to grab a hold of the phenomena we see when mostly epidural is a problem. But then there's that like, oh, when it like that, what is the mechanism that when we see an epidural actually be the rare benefit to a mom getting her vaginal birth? You know, hear what I'm saying. I'm talking about what is the mechanism at play there?
That makes sense.
Because we can use um, other options most of the time to grab a hold of that mechanism of, this mom just needed rest. This mom needed to be able to decrease her anxiety level, to be able to like cocoon around. Like she needed to be able to ground a little bit. And we could do that with water.
Hmm. Yes.
Instead of an epidural, if we look at, okay, what happened there? Why was that beneficial in this scenario? We can then take that out and look at a bigger view. So I'm not saying, I don't know, hear what I'm saying. I'm trying to
I
look at
hear
that
you.
that
Yes.
mechanism.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it would be like definitely the better choice to use the water before an epidural to achieve that same purpose.
Same purpose of, but like in that same way, like it could be beneficial, it could slow things down, it can be beneficial and speed things up and, be what she needed. Both can be true. And I have seen both be true for many women. So it's not a linear black and white picture. It just isn't.
Mhm.
So, yeah. All right. So, where should we go from here? Should we define some words maybe?
Yep, I think it's time to kind of dig into the specific claims and the research and
Okay.
put on that
So,
hat.
let me look at, well, let's define some words. Okay. So, hypoxia. Hypoxia means low in oxygen, right? It can mean a lot of different things depending on the context, but essentially, oxygen is the fuel of our body, and hypoxia is when our tissues are getting less fuel than usual. Okay. But similarly to, I was trying to think, you know how a hybrid car, or those like fancy new cars, maybe they're not hybrids, but they're like you pull up to the stoplight and it turns off for you because you've, instead of just idling, it like shuts everything down for a second,
Mm,
and then it, as soon as you hit the gas, it turns everything back on. It's not that you ran out of gas, right? Like the first time I was in one of those cars, I had rented it, had no idea what was happening. And I was like, it just died. Did the battery
stalled on
die?
me.
Is it, yeah, it stalled out. It died. It ran out of gas. What is just happening? And then as soon as I tried to go, it just whoop, right back on. This is similar to
Mm,
when a baby is experiencing a contraction, right? Or when a mom and a baby are experiencing contraction, the body is going, okay, let's, there's a little bit of this hypoxia that happens, but it's not hypoxia of baby is running out of oxygen and is in dire, everything's shut down and there's damage happening. They didn't run out of gas. The body has this beautiful physiological process that, like, the placenta is the fuel tank and it keeps a reserve ready. It's ready to, like, we're going to shift what we need to shift right now, and we're going to use only what we need to use in this moment as we experience this really intense contraction. And then when it's done, there's this recovery, right? That's automatically in a loop of the placenta is that fuel tank. That's what baby is working off of. And that hypoxia is only going to become dangerous if that tank is damaged or empty, right? If that placenta is shearing off, if the placenta doesn't have any blood in it for some reason, like because there was a placental abruption, if there is some kind of cord, rare cord accident, some like where there's damage to the tank, okay? It's not like, it's just like the car stopped for a second at the red light because you stopped, and it's shifting into a slightly different use of its resources and then is ready as soon as you hit the gas pedal. That's the what I want you to think about when we're thinking about a baby in a contraction versus a baby not in contraction. So those temporary dips in oxygen during contractions are normal. That's just like the car turning down. Babies are designed for this. This is part of the beautiful physiological design. God made these babies to be able to withstand labor. Does it mean it's not stressful? No, it's a stress on the body. It's a stress on the mom. It's a stress on the baby, but we're designed for it. We're
mhm,
designed to be able to persevere and endure through this by the grace of God with his help and his design. So the hypoxia, like a true hypoxia, means that the baby's backup systems can't keep up. That's not what's happening in a normal water birth at all. So okay, I'm just going to keep on with terms. So that's
okay.
that's what I want you to understand about hypoxia. Another big word that keeps being dropped, or physiological word that keeps being dropped, is ANP, right? This is a hormone. It's made by your heart, and it helps your body release the extra water and salt through your kidneys. Okay. So when you get into warm water, pressure from that water gently squeezes your legs and pushes the fluid toward your heart. Okay. Now, this is also going to be very different whether we're in, a water just up to our hips, water up to our chest, underwater by like 10 feet, because there's a differing pressure from the water and how much it's pushing on us, right? Okay. This is also not a bad thing, but let me keep explaining. So you get in the water, pressure pushes on us, and it pushes fluid to the heart. So the heart goes, there's some extra fullness here. I've got plenty. We can flush some fluid out, right? It's releasing ANP. which tells your body you can pee a little bit more. We need to keep our fluids balanced. We've got a lot of fluid around us. We don't need extra in us, right? So it's like the bathtub when it fills too full and there's an overflow drain that kicks in. That's like A and P. Okay. It's helping you stay balanced, not get too bloated, not have excess fluid in the body. What it's not doing is shutting down your board's hormones or your oxygen. It's not blocking your oxygen. It's just your body's way of fine tuning water balance when you're buoyant in the tub. And so that's normal. That's safe. It's just a very cool, very complex, this is very simplified, very complex process in the body to keep us in balance. So it's not a dangerous thing. It's not an alarm system. It's the overflow drain. Okay. Now, vasopressin is the hormone that helps the body hold on to water. So it's kind of like the opposite of A and P. Not completely directly, but very simplified, kind of the opposite. So if you're dehydrated or you're losing too much fluid, vasopressin tells your kidneys, hold on to this water. We need this, right? So if you're relaxed in a warm water and your body doesn't need it, your body senses plenty of circulation. So it's going to take a break. It doesn't need to be on right now. That's not dangerous. It's your body going, okay, it's safe to rest, release some tension. We're fine. We can, we don't have to work as hard right now to hold on to water because there's plenty. So this is like the body's like save mode for water, right? When you're immersed and calm, then there's no need to save right now. Everything's flowing freely. It's okay. So that's going to help regulate your water balance. It's not an oxygen switch. It's not turning down in warm water doesn't, harm you or your baby. That's not what's happening. Okay. So do both of those, that all makes sense to me so far?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So how that's going to work together. When you're laboring in warm water, your body is in this state of calm, right? You're floating, you're in God's hands, you're in this peaceful birth space. Your heart is going to be working efficiently. Your stress hormones are going to be lowering. Your body is balancing its fluids through A and P and vasopressin, and your body is receiving the steady oxygen they need through the placenta. It is not a suppression thing. It is a harmony thing. It's a balance. It's figuring out what does this body need right now? Let's shift to what it's needing so that we can turn on what we need to turn on, turn off what we need to turn off. And again, it's not even like switches. It's more of the right flow, right? Like we're changing pressures. Essentially, like if we were thinking about a plumbing situation, we're just changing the pressure. We need a little bit more over here. We need to direct that a little bit more over there. So these are big words, but they're not, I don't want them to be intimidating, and they're not bad guys. They're just your body's conversation with itself. That's what hormones are all about, is they're messengers in the body to tell the body and its other parts what it's needing to go on. That's all hormones are. They're messengers. Every hormone we're talking about, that's what they are. They're not, a high amount of one hormone isn't necessarily bad. It's sending a message for something. So we have to, one, step back and say, okay, if this is happening, why did God make that to do that? Right? Like there is all sorts of, if we want to get a little bit more theological here, there is all sorts of discussion about immersion in the water throughout the word. If that was a scary, horrible, bad thing, why, like, he's a good God and he designed our body to be immersed in water at times, and he designed our body to be on land at times. And he also gave us this amazing hormone system to figure out how to keep on living when we are in both of those places.
Mhm.
Again, we've got hypoxia, fancy word for momentary dip in oxygen or dangerous dip in oxygen. These can be used because it's just lack of oxygen. We're not, sometimes a hypoxia is this like physiological, is the dip and we're going to recover. And then sometimes we're talking about a really dangerous chronic hypoxia that baby is calling for help. We're going to see signs of that. And all of this sound water birth research has never seen increased morbidity or mortality to these babies. If they were experiencing hypoxia, we would see signs of that in their heart rate, right? In their stress resiliency to that birth. We're not seeing that, and it's been studied. So that in and of itself has been looked at, maybe not in the exact words of is there hypoxia, but that's what we're monitoring for, is this hypoxia. So, like it's not been found. So yeah, and then the A&P, that's your body's overflow valve, keeping you balanced in the tub. The vasopressin is the water saving. So that's telling your body it can take a break right now because we're floating in it. So none of that is evidence of harm. It's evidence of design.
That's cool.
Okay. Cool. So any thoughts there, questions that come up for you, or questions you think might come up by our listeners?
None are jumping to mind right now.
Okay,
I will let
cool.
you know if I think of some.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Well, okay, there is
yeah.
this.
Okay.
This is more anecdotal Instagram posts I've seen about it, but like that
Yeah.
baby's transition, they're slower when they come out of the water. Wouldn't that be hypoxia? Isn't that because they're hypoxic? I feel like
No.
that's a thought
But
process I've heard
yes.
thrown out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So, no. So hypoxia, and really, like, we would be looking at, very, very rarely do I see a baby, even a baby that needs breath, that needs help, that's struggling, land or water. Very rarely do I even see that with bradycardia.
Mm.
This is kind of why, if you go down like trainings for NRP and whatnot, they're even kind of like, do you even need to learn compressions out of hospital? And which I do think you need to, but that's a debate for a different day. But this is literally why that's a debate, is because it's so rare to see true deep bradycardia in an NRP situation, because it's not a cardiac issue. It's a movement of that fluid into the lungs. It's a completely respiratory generally. If there's a cardiac issue and that baby's heart rate is like really, dropping, and because they've had such hypoxia for so long that the heart is now giving out, like that is so rare. I mean, it's just so rare that if they're having that, there's probably some other issues that were going on with this baby on a larger level. So with generally, when we have to help a baby breathe, it's very much just about the transition of blood from the placenta getting into their lungs, opening up their alveoli, differing valves in the heart that have to switch over from the umbilical artery now to a completely like fetal circulation map versus the neonate. It is the most complex transition that the body goes through in all of life at any point in life. It is more, this one thing that happens within moments to a minute, couple minutes after birth is more complex than your entire pregnancy, labor, and birth. I mean, it is massively shifting their whole circulation system. It has to shift, and so sometimes that takes a minute.
Yep. Yep.
That's even why, like, things, when we look into the medical system and they're like, okay, let's run a CCHD, we wait 24 hours for that to run, because we want to make sure all of that has really occurred in completion before we're checking their heart. When you look at oxygen rates, it's several minutes before they're getting to full oxygen, that we would we would be completely freaking out if you were at 60% oxygen. And I don't have the little chart in front of me, but like at some point right after birth, it's actually normal for them to be there.
Right.
Like, let me grab the chart. Yeah. So 1 minute at birth, their oxygen rate should be 60 to 65%. If Brooke's oxygen rate was at 60 to 65% right
Ooh,
now,
we
I
don't
would
want
be
them at
calling
hospital.
911. Okay. Like, this is a very differing, there is a huge transition, and we are used to and expecting, if we put a pulse ox on a baby at 1 minute, it's 60 to 65%. This is a physiological hypoxia, a lack of oxygen. Is it abnormal? No. Is it dangerous? No. This is what we expect. 2 minutes,
Mhm.
65 to 70%. 3 minutes, 70 to 75%. It does not get up into 85, percent till 10 minutes after birth. Okay. So just some like medicalese to bring in here. There is a big transit, just to explain, there's a transition happening here, and it doesn't happen at the exact same rate for every single baby at every single time. This is kind of where you could start talking about APGAR, which is not a really great tool. And I have a love-hate relationship for APGAR. There are some things that are very like obviously intuitive to understand
Can help you
about,
remember some things to look for when you're watching a baby's transition.
it's a basic kind of, it seems pretty common sense. It feels very common sense when you look at it. But when you look at the fact that we've brought a timing aspect to that APGAR and we
Hmm.
expect this to be at this, these things at 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and we realize and go back to where it came from, that Virginia APGAR was trying to figure out what was normal for a baby's transition when they had been medicated. Every baby that was used to this in this study, like they were that were being observed in the study for the creation of APGAR, were C-sectioned babies under general anesthesia. Okay,
Yeah.
that is not normal
It doesn't transfer
physiology.
over to
It
home birth.
does not.
Nope.
It doesn't translate
And
over to
speaking of looking at
vaginal
the study
birth.
design
Right.
and knowing the context in which the research was done, who it was done on,
Yeah.
etc. Yeah.
So it doesn't even translate to vaginal birth. But we've been
Right.
using it as a standard, as the gold standard of how is this baby doing, but it was only studied as drugged babies, plain and
Crazy.
simple.
It's crazy.
And she was trying to figure out when should she be worried about these drugged babies. That was what she was trying to figure out, essentially. Great, thank you. Not actually appropriate. And so then it begs the question, in a differing environment, in a physiological thing, how long does that take? Is it faster? Is it longer? We don't know. We don't actually have, because we have the APGAR. Why study it more? So this is, we can't, it's a very much a medicalized tool, and we don't actually have good data on how long does it take? What is doing that? So, with that background foundation, do babies take longer to transition from a water birth? I think it's like a yes and a no. Like,
Mhm.
it appears to our eyes that it's taking them longer. But is it? Because they don't know that they've been born yet. Their body has not
Mhm.
received air yet. So if we were seeing, it's almost like we get an x-ray vision into what they would have been looking like and seeing like as they were descending and emerging right before, right? Because there's these moments within the water that they don't recognize they've been born, and we can see there's there's a circulation system happening until that body hits the air, until
Yeah.
they receive all of that input. Now, temperature of the water is going to make a big difference and is going to change some of these things. That's why it is important that we are making sure that water is actually kind of similar to mom's body temperature and those kinds of things, because a strong shock from mom's body to very cold water,
Hmm.
mom's body to very hot water, that's going to change. They're going to feel that. There's going to be a differing thing. So,
Yeah.
like, again, nuance here that could shift how they transition, but it's also a really simple control. Now, like, it's a thermometer. We just feel it and know what's going on, right? But that baby is like, they don't know they're born yet until they
Yeah.
hit the air.
So,
Um,
Lauren, would it be accurate somewhat to say that when you're seeing a baby still under the water, like even
I
I've seen
wouldn't
moms do
even,
sort of a slow movement through the water, you're almost looking at the baby as they would appear if they were still in the womb. That's
yeah,
why, so their coloring still looks like their coloring would look in the womb because the things that initiate the sequence of events that cause the transition
it's
haven't been
different.
triggered
Yep,
yet.
it hasn't
So it
triggered yet.
looks like they're not doing well, but really they're just
They're
not born
just
yet.
they're just not born yet, but they're born. And so
Right.
it's this little limbo space.
Hmm.
Now, they're being oxygenated with their placenta still, because they're
Right.
still
As they
on
have been the whole
fetal
time that they were in your womb.
circulation. They're
Yeah.
still on the fetal circulation. Now, If you take too long and you're like, oh, let me see how long the baby can stay underwater. This is cool. And, all of that, and the placenta detaches because there's something going on in your body, and your body knows that the baby has been born. Your body
True.
recognizes that there is no baby inside of your uterus, and it starts to contract down and shear off that placenta. And so then baby has to, then it doesn't have its outside circulation, it doesn't have its inside circulation anymore. So it's not smart to just, oh, let's just leave them in under the water. Like, they do need oxygen, and at some point your body's going to say, okay, we don't need this anymore, because it's assuming that you were smart enough to bring your baby out of the water. Right. So that has, it's nuance. We've got to make sure that we're looking at the whole picture and using our brains here. So yeah, that's the thing. But when they come out of the water, especially if you're doing it where you bring them up with their face coming out, so the water drips backward in there. Like, you don't want to bring the baby up upside down, because then
Right.
the water is
Yeah.
going to flood their face, and now they have air and water at the same time, right? Like, so there's some basic
Face first to
things.
bring them out. Yep.
Yep, nice and slow, let it drip past so that they're not getting water in their airways when they're trying to take that first breath. Things like when mom's pushing, when I mentioned earlier that one of the things I have to look for and watch when as the midwife in the room, if mom's pushing and she keeps like pushing up high and coming close to that surface of the water,
Uh-huh.
it's like, okay, we have to stay under the water or we have to get out of the water. Like,
Yep.
you could do whichever you want, but like, baby
Choose
has to
one.
stay fully under the water if they're going to be born in the water, or they have to be fully in the land if they're going to be on the land, right? Like, we can't be in both places. So these are some of those things that we have to take into consideration. But I wouldn't say that the baby is slower to transition. It's just that their start time is different. Should we be, as midwives, maybe counting our APGAR a little later for a water birth baby? Like, does that shift? I don't know, because we haven't done those studies. Like, I would love, like, are we even including what the cord looks like in our APGAR? Like, I recently took a breech course, and she brought up that point of like, okay, can we look at the cord and include that in our vitality of baby? APGAR
Oh,
doesn't
I
look at
love
the
that.
cord, like,
Right? That's
let's
a great point.
like, is it flat and
Is
white
it
and
limp at the
flaccid?
moment of
Is it
birth? And
right? Is it
yeah.
coiled and, full of, dark purple blue coloring? Like, is it starting to come uncoiled and go like, where is it at? What's it look like? That's part of their
Mm-hmm.
entire physiological process of how is that baby doing, and
Their
how is their
profile of how they're doing. Yeah.
full life support picture, right?
Which, of course, that wasn't included in the original APGAR because they were being surgically born, so the cord was being severed immediately, no
Correct,
matter what it was.
immediately. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, like, we don't have what would APGARs look like if the cord was staying attached, right? Like, how would it different? What would the oxygen, that little oxygen chart that I quoted off a little bit ago, how would that shift? What does that look like with a cord that's staying intact? Right? Like, would they be faster oxygenated with cords intact? My hypothesis is probably,
Yeah.
but maybe not. Maybe it would be a slower transition for them to give them a nice gentle balance into that space, instead of a like, we have to go fast because we've just lost our, oxygen. I don't know. Like,
Fascinating.
I could think about it in two different ways, and I'd have to do an actual study to figure it out, because my hypothesis could be wrong. So yeah, that's kind of some of the things that I think about when I'm thinking about how they're transitioning out of the water.
Yeah, that's good. So
Yeah,
were there any other points in the proponents of moving away from water birth as a safe option that you felt like you definitely wanted to break down for our listeners?
sure. Okay, let me look at my notes. So we had a few different claims. There was the water immersion causes fetal hypoxia equal to smoking a pack of cigarettes. There was the claim that water immersion lowers oxytocin and is therefore anti physiological.
Mhm.
And then there was the claim that physiological birth requires high oxytocin levels, essentially. I feel like there was another one I'm missing in my notes here. Maybe not. So yeah, like I could break down some of those because there was some truth that was getting mixed into some lack of clear understanding.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, I guess is there any of those that you felt like needed to be discussed?
The reduced oxytocin.
Okay. All right. Let me go back to my notes here. So
Because, and I'll frame this while you're looking at your notes.
yeah,
We
go ahead.
preach a lot about the importance of oxytocin to the birth process. And indeed, it is very important, very central player in the hormonal cocktail of birth. So it would obviously be concerning, it would seem at first blush, if oxytocin was being reduced in a water birth situation. Like, then does that have a negative impact on what's supposed to be the normal cascade of hormones in birth? So, and that study that she said was backing it up, the one with 11 people in the sample size,
Right.
did indicate a decrease. It didn't say how big of a decrease in the article summary that I read, but a decrease in oxytocin for the women in the water.
Right. So, water immersion lowers oxytocin. So, this is true transiently in the plasma. So, that, a blood amount is shown in that study of 11 women. Now, the claim was therefore it's going to oppose physiological birth, but this is false and unsupported. So, the same study that is being used here reports relaxation,
Mhm.
normal progress, and no harm. So the larger trials also show water immersion supports the physiological processes that we were talking about earlier, right? So the lower plasma oxytocin equaling less labor progress is this false equivalence. The oxytocin function depends on receptor sensitivity, our stress hormones, and our central signaling. So it's not just this peripheral concentration in our blood. It's not, again, A plus B equals C. It's a much larger picture. So the study found 1 hour of immersion lowered plasma oxytocin and the vasopressin levels, right? That means, or it also found that the woman reported less anxiety, and some of them reported uh, no difference in pain experience, and the ones that had really high pain did find that, like a high pain like experience, did find that it brought relief to them. But those who were in kind of like a normal range or lower range outside of water said that it didn't really shift it for them, which again kind of was what I was pointing back to, the like, what if they need that thing to be able to come in and finish out the birth? But really, on the large scale of averages, the pain tolerance, pain awareness was not any different. So less anxiety was the biggest find here, which we know is supportive to our oxytocin, right?
Mhm.
So contraction frequently decreased slightly, but then each contraction was lasting longer. So it was like the initial power of the contraction was slightly decreased, but it was compensating in a different way to make it a longer contraction. So we are seeing shifts happening in the body, not a stall of labor.
Mhm.
And no fetal distress or poor outcomes were reported. So, what is getting left out in this kind of viewpoint is that peripheral blood oxytocin levels does not equal uterine oxytocin function or brain
Mhm.
oxytocin signaling. Okay, they are not equal. They're related, but they're not equal. This is peripheral blood versus where is that oxytocin being used, right? Oxytocin is pulsatile. It's highly variable minute to minute. It's
Mhm.
going through a cycle in the body, a feedback loop, right? And then stress hormones are what actually inhibit labor, right? So water immersion lowers our stress hormones, which then supports that pulsatile picture of the oxytocin. So the relaxation and our parasympathetic activation of getting in the water, that's what caused that. I'm trying not to use the big words. So when we got in the water, when we felt the flow, we felt that relaxation, the anxiety lowers, you're feeling more grounded in that, entire experience. The parasympathetic part of our nervous system is activated. Okay, so that relaxation activates the parasympathetic, and that is going to enhance the receptor sensitivity of oxytocin function in your uterus. That is physiological birth, right?
Yes.
That is, absolutely. I mean, that is what it's about. So, the study is showing relaxation and balance. It's not disruption. It's lowering blood oxytocin serum. It isn't anti-physiological. It's part of a parasympathetic shift that allows labor to flow safely and calmly and smoothly, being a part of that river.
Awesome. So the study is essentially saying the opposite of what is
Yes.
being claimed it says. It is not
Yes.
supporting the claim that it's disruptive to physiological birth because of a decrease in oxytocin. It is supporting the
Correct.
opposite.
Correct. Because the plas yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Very
It's
cool.
decreasing our cortisol, it's decreasing all of our stress hormones so that labor continued. And the labor continued normally in this study. The
Hmm.
contractions didn't stop. The birth outcomes were healthy. So the main takeaway wasn't that it suppressed oxytocin or interrupted physiology, which was what was kind of trying to be extrapolated from this study. It was that a water immersion reduces stress hormones. We know as birth attendants, if a mama is stressed, things are going to be disrupted, right? And so
Yeah.
we can see water birth as a tool for a stressed out mom because it's not disrupting or lowering oxytocin, it's modulating it. It is,
Hmm.
it is that regulator. So it's calming the system, not stopping it. And that is just like high cortisol isn't always a bad thing. We need high cortisol. We get high cortisol when we are pushing our baby out, or high, not cortisol. I can never say that word. It is,
Catecholamines.
yes, thank you. We get high in that because we need the strength and awareness when we push out the baby. And so, like, this is a bad hormone for labor, but actually, is it? Because it's not that high levels, low levels of these hormones are actually what's needed. It is a symphony. It's like when you're listening to an orchestra, and sometimes you can really hear, the horns, and they're really loud and they're what is calling the show. And then all of a sudden they quiet down. They're still there, but they're quieting down for the string instruments to come up, right? And then you hear the percussion, and none of them left the stage, right? They're all
Yeah.
still a part of this harmony that's coming. And sometimes they have a bigger role to play in the song, and sometimes they have a lesser role to play, but they're still holding the melody. The
Hmm.
percussion didn't disappear. It's still there. You can't hear it as the main show anymore, but if you listen for it, it's still there and it's still holding actually everything.
That's such a great metaphor.
That is what's happening here. These are messengers. They are in a super complex
Hmm.
orchestra and
That's cool.
upholding flow
Amazing.
because
Hmm.
God's so cool. He's so
It's so
cool.
hard to even study birth in a
It
meaningful
really
way,
is.
frankly.
It
Like
really
even
is.
even though we were talking about, the importance of like peer-reviewed, well-designed studies, blah blah blah. Like, yes, and also it is so hard to try to quantify and study and break down into pieces and establish causation
Right.
about something as complex and multi-layered and multidimensional as birth, which is why we have that other podcast episode about you can't measure mystery. This is another element of that to me. In some ways, I
Really
think it will
is.
always kind of defy our attempts to study and research it and draw firm empirical data out of it.
Right.
And so at some point, there's like a little bit of a degree of living with mystery. And yet, when we can, the bits we can get out of research and studying it are just, for me at least, like increase my appreciation for, like, wow, God,
Yeah,
you
for
done
sure.
good.
You done good. Yeah. It's definitely the more I know nothing,
Hmm.
mantra of mine is like, that's what I when I start studying anatomy and physiology, I'm just always blown away by his incredible design and just how much we absolutely know nothing.
Mhm.
It's so humbling and so beautiful because he knows it all. And that's why I trust his design. That's why I trust him because he does know how it works and why sometimes it's, if we're walking through the way of the hearth, mother, it's time to pray and find out like should you be planning a water birth? Like, let's pray about
Yeah.
that. Let's, walk through and wait on him and get curious and, recently did a birth that because I think it was only one, but there was some really extenuating circumstances with this birth. And so probably the first time that I was like, yeah, we can't do water birth for this. Like, we can't do it.
Mhm.
And mom knew that too. Like intuitively, she knew, and she was kind of like, I don't, because there was some real concerns and some not physiological things happening with this baby. And we knew that. And so we removed that factor. I won't go
She was
into
able
her
to labor in the
story.
water a bit, right?
She
She could
did.
labor
She
in it, but you
labored
couldn't
in the
birth in it.
water, but she had to,
So
she
that's
got
another
out.
distinctive to make, friends, while you're thinking through your choices here is like sometimes women will just use the water for like a relief during labor, but don't actually end up giving birth in the water. And so if
Right.
that feels more comfortable too, that's another option.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a thing that came up was like, are we running from pain by picking up water? And like, maybe we should accept the suffering, accept the pain portion, which we talk a little bit about that in our Surpassing Pain podcast.
Hmm.
Because yes, there are people who are trying to run away from the birth experience, and there's power in the experiencing this transformative process, right? And not checking out with all of the ways that there are possible natural and otherwise very not natural ways to check out from birth. And so like I hear the heart behind the like, is this,
Hmm.
but I think it's taking it a little too far. Because when I was started this little train of thought, I had this like whoosh of even Jesus on the cross asked for a drink of water. Like it's okay to, seek out the comfort in he is our comfort in the hard, right? He is our peace beyond understanding. Like he doesn't just go, this hard thing, deal with it, child. Like he's always one to come and hold. And I feel like for me, water birth holds such a beautiful picture of baptism and the
Hmm.
mikveh and just the
Hmm.
immersion of water. And like, there's so much. I mean, that could be a whole podcast on itself. The symbolism that is there to birth in water, when blood and water mixed from Jesus. I mean, like, there's so much there. And I could completely
For
geek
sure.
out on the symbolism that can be present if that's what you're looking for and into, because the water holds such symbolism in the Bible. So there's that too. And I think that there's not a black and white answer.
No.
Not every woman should give birth in the water. Not every woman should never give birth in the water. Like,
Right. Yeah,
it's
there's no
not.
absolute statements coming from us here today. It's yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Except
and
that one.
that's yeah, yeah, right.
There are absolutely no absolutes.
And that's the primary reason we wanted to do this episode was just kind of like if you've been seeing the content circulating around about water birth and how scary and dangerous it is and equating it with packing or smoking packs of cigarettes and stuff, like just wanting to like pull that apart just enough to kind of discharge the fear that kind of I think is being blasted out there.
Yeah.
It's really can have a fear mongering effect, even if that's not people's intention. Like it's being
Yeah.
presented as like we just want you to know so you can have informed like and make informed choices. Yes, but also like the information is not really being presented in
Right.
a entirely accurate manner. So we hope this takes away any kind of fear, self-doubt, second guessing
Yeah.
that may be creeping in for you as you're planning your own births. And ultimately, always our goal is to direct you back to the Good Shepherd and to your Holy Spirit infused intuition and to remain open to the possibility that what's worked for you in a past birth might not work for this one. What your last baby needed and benefited from might not be what this baby needs and benefits from. So always keep listening, always keep having an ongoing dialogue with your father about the plans you make and knowing that he knows the whole picture. So he may give you suddenly an aversion to land birth when before you only wanted land birth or vice versa. And there
Right.
may be some reason behind that that you don't really understand, but it would be wisdom to heed it rather than ignore that. So, yeah, so don't be tossed back and forth
By the
by the
waves.
waves and blowing here and there by every wind of teaching about water birth or anything. Keep your anchor firmly on the rock
Yeah. Yeah.
and trust him and trust yourself to know how to make good choices for yourself and your baby.
Absolutely. And I feel like there was still so many claims that we didn't even hit. And so
It's
if
true.
there are more that you have questions about, we have our community. We'd love for you to join and we can chat about it in a safe place where no one's trying to like vilify anyone else. If you have some honest questions about maybe some of the math that you've seen or some of these other words that you're unfamiliar with, I'd be happy to have those conversations. I'm just not big on the vilifying of people and pointing fingers and whatnot. Yeah. Also recognize that if you come to our community with those kinds of questions, we're not going to be being ugly to other people.
Yes. Yes. We don't want to amp up like nastiness at all,
Yes.
but just
But I'm
wanted to,
happy to help with education.
yeah.
So,
So we'll put the
all
link to
right.
our
Well, I hope that
community in
this
the
was
show notes
beneficial
too.
to you all. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So more to come,
All right.
and we'll see you next week.
All right. See you next week. Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Holy Wild Birth. We hope that you were genuinely encouraged, inspired, and challenged by what you heard today. If you're loving what you hear, please make sure that you share it. Leave reviews. That helps other mamas find this content as well. And don't forget to read the show notes, okay? Because that's where you can find our email address if you want to reach out to us and start a conversation. It's also where you'll find free offerings as well as invitations to work with me and or Lauren. We can't wait to get to know you. See you next week.